This is our Not Your Generic PCOS webinar. We are saying the word generic because I feel like there's so much information out there around PCOS that's maybe intimidating or rooted in fear mongering and maybe a little bit scary. And I wanted to make this presentation really fun and really female forward because PCOS is a female endocrine disorder. And March is also Female History Month, which is amazing, Women's History Month. So it's very apropos that we're doing this webinar in March. You're going to learn so much about PCOS today, but I also really hope to empower you and give you the tools that you need in order to advocate for yourself in healthcare and in this space. I think that, and as you'll learn, women sometimes can be dismissed and tend to be silenced a little bit. So I hope that you pick up on some gems in this webinar and really learn, how to advocate for yourself. Okay. So this is just a little bit about me. I am a dietitian here at Kulina Health. I specialize in women's health. So that's, of course, PCOS, endometriosis, sustainable weight loss and weight management, general healthy eating, relationship with food, emotional eating, and then blood sugar management as well. Okay, so this is our agenda. We're going to be talking about the science behind PCOS, and we're really going to set the foundation for what these four letters truly mean, PCOS, right? We're going to talk about managing blood sugar. You'll soon learn that blood sugar is like the North Star of PCOS treatment. We'll talk about my PCOS pillars, PCOS pointers, and then we'll go over some questions that you guys submitted, and we'll look at the chat for some questions that come in as well. Okay. So before we even begin, I want to know, what is the most common myth that you hear around PCOS? You can drop it in the chat. Most common myth. Lose weight, hard time getting pregnant, that you can't get pregnant with PCOS, treated with birth control, and ultrasounds. Yeah. Infertility, there's no treatment, low carb. Okay, I love these. Incurable, totally. Avoid carbs, only affects overweight women. Oh my God, you guys, these are great. Okay, good. Good. Okay, so what is PCOS? I remember when I was in graduate school, PCOS, I think it was like one sentence in our endocrine chapter. There really wasn't that much information about PCOS. And if it was limited information. I really don't recall learning much about it. And it wasn't until I got into private practice and started counseling all of these different women, I started hearing the same chief complaints about inability to lose weight, these crazy cravings, infertility, physical manifestations like acne, infertility, I think I said that. And I started to put the pieces together and realized how prevalent PCOS really is. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel like over the past 5 years, have heard more and more about PCOS. And I really think that this is a great thing because we need to be discussing female health conditions, as I was saying, to bring awareness and education to as many women as possible. But on that same note, there's a lot of noise and fear mongering, perhaps, with media influencers spewing information on like Instagram and TikTok that graduated from TikTok University, right? And they're not really qualified. So we need to be listening to the right type of information in order to discern what's really relevant and impactful and essential for us, which is why I'm so thrilled that you're here with me today. So 1 in 5 women are diagnosed with PCOS in this country. That's 15% of women, okay? Which makes it the most common endocrine disorder that affects women. 70% of women go undiagnosed or are misdiagnosed. But I really do think that that number is higher, probably more around 90%. Women left and right are dismissed. They're being told that they have irritable bowel syndrome, that they're just anxious, just go and lose weight and exercise more. I always say if there was a condition that was the number one cause of male infertility, that undiagnosed percentage would likely be a lot lower and there would be better treatment, right? Um, so as I said, PCOS is the number one cause of infertility in women. The cause is unknown. We don't know the exact root cause of PCOS, but it could be several factors. It could be genetic, it could be elevated insulin, elevated androgen production, and environmental exposure. What we do know is although PCOS, whoever wrote that was right, it's not technically curable, but it's very, very well treated, and treatment is very, very well managed. If you take proper care. So symptoms are very well managed. And then majority of women are diagnosed after the age of 18 because PCOS presentation may be less clear in adolescence. So that means that diagnosis is well into the teenage years when women have hopefully had a menstrual cycle for quite some time. Okay. So PCOS, how do we know if we have it? It's a diagnosis of exclusion, meaning that other disorders should be ruled out first. There are 3 criteria for proper diagnosis, and you need 2 of the 3 to be properly diagnosed, okay? So the first is irregular menstrual cycles, irregular. This could be amenorrhea, which is the absence of menstruation for more than 3 cycles, okay? Or oligomenorrhea, which is defined as infrequent or abnormal cycles. So that's the first. The second is polycystic looking ovaries, which can be detected with an ultrasound. This is not to be confused with actual cysts on your ovaries. You don't necessarily need that. Polycystic looking ovaries are ovaries with many different follicles on it, many follicles, and in those follicles are eggs, and they're typically referred to as like the string of pearls, if you've ever heard that. So polycystic looking ovaries is really what you're looking for in a diagnosis on that ultrasound, not necessarily cysts. So if you have these 2 present, irregular cycles and cysts on your ovaries, you can be diagnosed with PCOS. And then the third one is testosterone-like symptoms. So this can be high testosterone that's shown on blood work, or it can be testosterone-like symptoms that present itself physically, like male pattern balding, which is, on your hair. It could be acne, it could be hirsutism, which is hair where you don't necessarily want it, on your chest or on your chin, on your face. So if you have any of these elevated testosterone physical symptoms, this is your third criteria. And I will say also that PCOS can be sometimes challenging to diagnose because the symptoms mimic other conditions. Plus, some women they only experience mild symptoms, which makes it quite difficult to really identify that it is PCOS. And then PCOS manifests differently in everyone, and treatment is not one size fits all, which I'm sure you guys have heard. As I've shared, there's a variety of symptoms with PCOS, from irregular cycles, no menstrual cycle at all, weight gain, infertility, acne, hair loss on the scalp, increased hair growth on our chest or on our body where we don't necessarily want it, inflammation. And then generally speaking, PCOS patients, they tend to have a history of anxiety and depression. They tend to be a little bit moodier. They're more prone to anxiety and depression. If you look at their history, they've had panic attacks or they're being treated by a therapist for anxiety. Okay. So this is the bread and butter of why we're here, right? How do we manage symptoms? My primary treatment goal with PCOS is really to balance blood sugar. And we'll discuss more of that. Of course, that's the food part of it. But then we want to improve quality of life. So, as I said, women with PCOS, they have a greater likelihood of experiencing depression and anxiety. And if you think about it, these patients, they experience weight gain, hair thinning, acne, perhaps painful periods. And then what happens? Self-confidence can decrease and self-esteem can really be affected. So we really want to improve that quality of life. And then we want to reduce the risk of long-term health concerns. These are only a handful of complications listed, but women with PCOS are at increased risk for cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, infertility. I've said it a few times now. I hope that if you take one thing away from today, it's that PCOS is the leading cause of infertility. Endometriosis, endometrial cancer is another long-term concern, metabolic syndrome, anxiety and depression, and then eating disorders or disordered eating. In fact, more than half of women with PCOS will be diagnosed after the age of 40, will be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So we need to get ahead of that. We need to balance blood sugar and really get ahead of the game as soon as possible. Okay, back to the chat, you guys. Oh my God, I see there's things here. Okay. When I say blood sugar, what do you think of? That phrase, blood sugar. Diabetes. Yes, that's correct. Whenever I say that, yep, insulin. Yes, Ellen. Yes, insulin, glycemic load. That's a good question, Christine. We'll get to that. A1C, absolutely. So whenever I'm speaking with my patients and we're talking about blood sugar or we're about to go into a blood sugar education, I always ask this question and they're like, Rachel, I don't know why I don't have diabetes. I don't need to learn this. But blood sugar is relevant to all of us because we all eat and we all have a blood sugar curve, right? Okay. Oops. Okay. So I like to think of blood sugar as our body's theoretical thermometer. We all have a blood sugar curve, which is a direct response to what we eat, as I was saying, but in particular, carbohydrates. When we eat carbohydrates, they're broken down into glucose, okay, or blood sugar, and then when we eat, our blood sugar curve goes up and then it comes down. Again, it's really affected by the amount of carbohydrates that we eat. And I want you to almost think of it like a graph, right? We want to avoid those peaks and then those really, really low dips. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm speaking and I need to go here. Okay. So we want to avoid those peaks and those really low dips. Again, think of a graph. And I want you to almost think of like a rolling wave, a little ripple effect. That's what we want instead, okay? Blood sugar and PCOS are so tightly correlated. When our blood sugar is kind of off, meaning that we either go really, really high and then we come crashing down, that crashing down affects our metabolism, it affects our mood. We get hangry, we get crabby, we get cranky. It affects our energy. We have no energy, and then we start snacking because we need to bring that energy right back up, which again is those cravings, right? That low blood sugar, if you've ever felt that shaky feeling, and then you're like, I need the quickest snack available to me right now, that's probably a result of low blood sugar. And when blood sugar is moving and grooving the way that we want it to, it could result in positive metabolic regulation, a great mood, great energy, and manageable cravings. Okay. This is going to be a little sciencey, but we can do it. Okay. So insulin is a hormone that is made by our pancreas, okay? And it's released into the blood when we eat carbohydrates. And glucose, that breakdown of carbs, hits your blood, okay? So glucose hits our bloodstream and the pancreas, almost think of it like a garage, shoots out the insulin, which you can think about as like a taxi cab. So insulin helps move glucose out of the blood and into the cells. Let's go back to that taxi cab. So insulin, it's the taxi. It drives through the blood or like the street, collecting the sugar, drives it to the cell where the cell opens up, accepts the sugar and turns it into energy. This is how it should go. And this is great because our body loves glucose. It's our body's number one source of fuel. We love glucose, okay, which means that we need to eat carbohydrates, which we're going to talk about more. But for most women with PCOS, the cells have become on the outside have become a little bit resistant to the insulin. Insulin's knocking at the door of the cell, but no one's really responding. Okay. And as a result, the sugar has trouble getting into the cells and more sugar is staying in your blood. There's more taxis on the street. Your pancreas, though, is likely making enough insulin still. The garage on the other side is making more insulin to try and clear the sugar out from the blood because we can't just keep sugar hanging out in the blood. So where does the insulin take the sugar? To be stored as fat, which is why we sometimes refer to insulin as a fat storing hormone. Okay. Okay. So this is what is insulin resistance. I'm not sure if you guys know what that is, but it is very, very common in women with PCOS. So insulin resistance seems to be inherent in PCOS regardless of a woman's BMI. It can affect 65 to 95% of women with PCOS, regardless if they have obesity or not. So over 50% of women with PCOS in a healthy BMI category still has insulin resistance, okay? So cravings, going back to that low blood sugar peak on the graph, or not peak, that little dip, cravings, which is so common in women with PCOS, really has a physiological reason. It's not just, what I hear from my patients, which is, oh, it's a lack of willpower. I just don't have the motivation. I'm just so tired at the end of the day. Those things could be relevant and could be true, but there's high levels of insulin that are likely being pumped out throughout the day to clear the sugar. And then we have that drop of any sort of sugar that is kind of remaining in the blood. And then that's that dip, and what comes down must go back up, right? To bring us back to a little bit of homeostasis. So then what do? We get home, we raid the pantry, we have these crazy cravings that some of my patients call, they're primal. Like they can't control it. So again, we need to give ourselves a little bit of slack. It's likely physiological too. So insulin is released to clear sugar and store it as fat. But, and this is important, and again, a little sciencey, but we can do it together. High levels of insulin in the blood can also stimulate the ovaries. Okay, we're bringing the ovaries in now. It stimulates the ovaries to secrete testosterone. And testosterone, which is a male hormone, but women have a little bit of it too, the ovaries then produce more testosterone. Okay, so there is a relationship between insulin and testosterone, which then gives us that those male pattern characteristics like acne, body hair, facial hair, and perhaps those irregular cycles, which then those irregular cycles leads to infertility. So when it comes to PCOS, fixing that insulin resistance, first and foremost, is key. The first line of defense is a healthy diet that is low in sugar to really begin managing the release of insulin to begin with. And then I didn't include this, but I do want to mention it, that exercise is really important. We're going to talk more about exercise, but just before I forget, the more movement we get, the receptors on the edge of the cell become more sensitive or responsive. So sensitive and resistant are opposites of one another. We want to become insulin sensitive because that means that our cells are more responsive to insulin. So they open up, they grab that sugar, which is a great thing, right? The problem with most of these, or some of these rather, PCOS patients is that diet and exercise alone, it doesn't always work. It's not enough. And that's why they get so frustrated. And that's also why PCOS patients are at risk for developing eating disorders or disordered eating, right? These young women are struggling with their weight. They're eating out with their friends and they're eating and ordering the same thing that their friends do, except they're gaining weight Their friends are not. Out of frustration, they develop eating disorders, which is why it is so important that we diagnose these patients early on so that they don't go down the wrong path. Okay, so how do we balance blood sugar with PCOS? I have a little saying, a little phrase. It's called FPP, fiber, protein, produce. And again, so infertility is the number one cause of with PCOS is the number one cause of infertility, and FPP. You guys can leave now. This is the presentation. I want you guys to remember this. So actually, first, let's go to meal timing. I want every patient with PCOS, really every patient, to make sure that they're really demonstrating consistent eating patterns. That means eating every 3 to 4 hours. Why that little range? Because the longer we go without eating, the more our blood sugar dips, again, back to that graph. And we want to try to, have those ripples, those rolling hills. And we know that consistent eating patterns, about 3 to 4 hours, make sure that we're really steady. So breakfast at 8 a.m., lunch around 12, an afternoon snack perhaps 3:30, dinner around 6:37. That's a perfect, I mean, come see me and we'll personalize that, but that's a very easy example. So then going back to the FPP, let's start on the bottom, produce. That's our fruits and vegetables, right? We're going to talk about supplements, but I think most people can get away with, again, most people can get away with not taking a multivitamin if you have produce every time you eat. You're showering your body with antioxidants and vitamins, minerals, color. So vegetables, unlimited. And I do like to say fruit max twice a day. Fruit is delicious and it's packaged with fiber and antioxidants, water, but it does still have that sugar, which will at the end of the day turn into glucose. We just want to manage it. So max 2, and bonus points if one of those 2 servings is berries, which are really high in antioxidants and really good for brain health and heart health. So produce every time you eat. Then we have our protein, which is really trendy right now, and I'm thrilled that it's trendy right now. I want my PCOS patients to have about 25 to 30 grams per meal. That range is going to turn on muscle synthesis, which is really great for repairing and building up our muscles. That protein breaks down into amino acids, which then in turn is great for hormone health, not just our estrogen and testosterone, but our neurotransmitters, which are hormones, right? Those, the serotonin and dopamine, our melatonin. So great for hormone health. And our GLP-1, which is so trendy right now. GLP-1 is actually a hormone, leptin. It's a hunger hormone. And those are activated by more protein, okay? Weight management, protein is our macronutrient that promotes satiety because it's digested really slowly. So the more protein we have, the better we're going to control our weight. And then protein is also really great for immunity. Even though we're coming out of that flu and cold season, we still want to stay, we want our immunity to be super strong. Then, we have fiber. Fiber is the indigestible part of a carbohydrate. We cannot break fiber down. We love fiber, right? It's going through our body. We're trying to tear it apart and we just can't. So that combo of protein and fiber together really elongates your blood sugar curve, which is amazing, keeps insulin at bay. And then that fibrous ball kind of sops up excess cholesterol, excess blood sugar. It goes to your gut where your probiotics eat away at it. It's great for inflammation, great for bulking up stool. So we love, love, love that fiber. And we want to have about 30 grams per day. I say more. And this is a great example of how we want to build your plate. I know it's a little elementary, but it can be super helpful. So half of your plate should be that the produce, non-starchy veggies. Then this high fiber carbs. We have, whole grain bread, quinoa, Sweet potatoes, pumpkin, parsnips. We love it all. Chickpeas, lentils, those legumes. And then another quarter of your plate is going to be protein. That lean protein, tuna, salmon, chicken, turkey, tofu, eggs, things like that. Okay. PCOS pillars for improved quality of life. We did the diet. That's our FPP. PCOS responds really, really well to diet and lifestyle. We're not going to cover medications today because we just don't have that much time. And this presentation is really highlighting the impact that optimizing our lifestyle can have on our well-being. But really, these pillars are applicable for anyone trying to optimize their life, PCOS or not. Okay, told you we'd get back to the exercise. It's no surprise we want to move daily. A combination of planned exercise and ADL is ideal. ADL is a little term that I coined. It's active daily living, which is, walking to work, taking the stairs, parking farther away from your destination, like the other side of the parking lot to get extra steps in. I know it may seem small, but it really can add up. And then planned exercise is, of course, at 30, 45, 60-minute time that you carve out for yourself to meet at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week, or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise per week. And we do want to focus on resistance training with PCOS in addition to cardio. I know everyone always says, what's better, strength training or cardio? And aerobic exercise, which is cardio, and resistance training, they both increase insulin sensitivity. So opening up that cell to so the insulin becomes more responsive by 77%. I'll never forget that stat because it's just random. That's 77. So cardio plus resistance training opens up, makes the cell more responsive to the insulin by 77%. Versus only doing cardio, which only increases insulin sensitivity by 30%. So we really do want to build up that strength training. Both are important, okay? I say do what you love, whatever is going to keep your body moving and with joy. People say to me, like, what type of exercise should I do, Rachel? And I say the one that you enjoy to begin with. Don't worry about the amount of weights that you're lifting or the type of class. If someone were to tell me go do a rumble class or kickboxing, I wouldn't do it. That's not really my thing. Or go for a run, I wouldn't do it. But I love to dance. I'm going to do that. I enjoy it, right? The driving force for consistency is joy. So find what you love to do and just move your body and do it, okay? Then we have sleep. Keep in mind, 8 hours of rest is best. Obviously, that may not be doable for everyone all of the time, but 7 to 8 hours really is ideal for the most part. And this is all cyclical. This all works together in tandem. The less we sleep, the crabbier we feel. The crabbier we feel, we want to keep our energy up, and then we, crave and consume sugar, and then we feel really crabby because maybe we feel guilty, and then it's a vicious cycle. I love to talk about sleep hygiene. We want to be going to bed earlier, and it's so hard to do this with, so much stimulation. There's our phones, TV, extracurricular activities, but between 10 and 2 a.m. is really ideal. It's when we get our most beneficial rest. And that's because we're in deep sleep. It's that deep sleep stage. And that's when growth hormone is produced. And this is essential for repair, for brain health, cognition, hormone regulation, and our immunity. So the earlier the better. It's not just about, oh, well, I went to sleep at 2 a.m, but I got 8 hours. I woke up later into the morning. We do want that earlier sleep window. Okay. Stress management. We all need to work on our stress management. I'm leading that train, okay? We all do. And one of my favorite parts of my job is helping my patients build out their team of advocates. A lot of times I'll collaborate with a patient's therapist and make sure that they're doing well. It's, as I said, PCOS patients are very common in those with PCOS, and talk therapy it's an excellent way to regulate stress and improve self-esteem. I think community is an undervalued pillar in wellness. This can be comprised of friends, family, a book club, coworkers, people you meet in an exercise class. A patient once said to me, and I never forgot it, that life is a team sport. And it's so true. We really need people around us that are positive, that are motivating, that are like-minded, and really help to propel us towards our best self. So community is essential. And I added reading because that's my favorite way to de-stress, but anything that doesn't involve a screen, like needle pointing or a Wordle, crossword puzzle, some sort of disassociation with life is really, really, really key. And then reducing toxin exposure. I should probably do a whole webinar on that on its own. And this is becoming more mainstream, which is great. We know that there is a link between these toxic chemicals, phthalates, BPA, dioxins, parabens, and PCOS. They're called endocrine disruptors because they interfere with our hormones and they cause issues ranging from cognitive dysfunction to infertility. And these chemicals are sometimes called forever chemicals because they just persist in our body. And they're found in the foods we eat, makeup, skincare products, cooking utensils. And the more we know, the more we can be proactive, even though this is, I know, overwhelming. It feels like I have to go clean my entire kitchen and bathroom and start from scratch. But an easy place to begin is by ditching plastic, swapping Tupperware for glass Pyrex, your plastic water bottles for stainless steel. And you can use EWG, which is the Environmental Working Groups app or online resource, or Yuka, which is another app, to kind of determine what cleaner skincare looks like. Okay, supplements. I'm gonna race through because I think we're almost out of time, but I want to make sure we get this. So supplements, okay. Supplements are very, very, very helpful. The foundational therapy for PCOS remains nutrition and lifestyle intervention. But supplements will support your efforts in a really big way. Vitamin D, it's a perfect reason why we supplement. We can't get enough of it through food. Vitamin D can help with weight management, immunity, our mood, bone health, our reproductive hormones. You want to work with an RD or your MD, but I typically say anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 IUs. Ovasitol is a great blend of two different compounds naturally produced in our body. They're great for fertility, blood sugar regulation. You want to look for a 40-to-1 ratio, which will be split up 2,000 to 50 per scoop. It's in a scoop. So it's a 40-to-1 and 2,000 to 50 per serving. We have, okay, I'm going to race through. We have omega-3s. We have curcumin, which is really great, both of them for decreasing inflammation. Again, probably tough to get through food. Omega-3s you can get through fish, fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, tuna. And then there's plant-based varieties as well, such as flax seeds, walnuts. But again, it's hard to meet that optimal level. And then curcumin is found in turmeric, but we're not having like lots of turmeric. So supplementing is a really, really great way to get that anti-inflammatory benefit. NAC, it's a master antioxidant. It's awesome for helping us detoxify. It's great for liver support, kidney support. It's also great for that insulin sensitivity. And then magnesium, which is just, I joke, I'm like the grandpa or the dad in my big fat Greek wedding where he sprays Windex on everything. I'm like, take your magnesium. There's really not an upper limit. It helps with over 300 enzymatic reactions in our body, from sleep to relaxation, GI benefits, cognition. So you want to talk to your provider to see which one is right for you, because there's a host of them. And again, see your RD and they'll help you. Okay, so in the interest of time, we just, of course, we want to talk about some considerations. Have you addressed diet and lifestyle? As I said, food first, but supplements very close second. Eating a very nutrient-rich diet. It's essential to reversing symptoms and balancing hormones. You can't take supplements and just hope that it's going to take the place of a strong lifestyle, but they're meant to enhance your diet, okay? So we want to always go back to that FPP, but supplements are a great backup plan for us to enhance. Then we want to make sure that you have recent labs. Do you have recent labs to provide that personalized data for us? As I was saying with the vitamin D. I wish that we could like unzip our bodies and see what's going on, but the way that we can do that is through lab work. Lab work really tells us a story about what's going on in the body, and it's a little bit of a roadmap for us, and it'll determine the dosage of that supplement. So we want to make sure that we're up to date with our labs about 1 to 2 times a year. Again, that vitamin D is a really good example. Vitamin B12 is a good example. It'll give you an idea of the dosage. We want to be sure of our current medications, make sure there's no interactions, and then lastly, quality control. There's many supplements that have different fillers, and then the quality of the magnesium of the supplement can be compromised. So at Culina, we use Full Script, which is a great supplement dispensary and top of the line third party supplement. So if you need supplements, ask your Culina practitioner and they'll help determine which one is best for you. Okay. And then this is just a great cheat sheet. PCOS can be really overwhelming, especially in the beginning. And I like to encourage my patients to think about abundance, what we can bring in order to crowd out. And this is a toolbox of what I love to bring in. Water, we barely even spoke about water, lean protein, healthy fats, movement, sleep hygiene. And then we want to crowd out that refined sugar that's going to peak our blood sugar, white carbs that's going to peak our blood sugar, that saturated fat, sedentary lifestyle, alcohol, those forever chemicals, and then BS, right? We want to make sure that we're filtering out that noise. And then there's some additional support over here that may be helpful, some apps, and then some of my favorite supplements that I couldn't get a chance to include. And then, every woman experiences PCOS differently. It's so important to me that you feel, as I was saying in the beginning, confident and armed with the education to really navigate your body and this healthcare system the best that you can. And one of the best ways is to ask for help, by working with a registered dietitian who can really help navigate you. I always say once you're educated, you become empowered. Once you're empowered, you become confident. And once you're confident, you don't have to look to the left or the right and go on WebMD and play your own doctor. You know what to do. And you don't have to go on TikTok for answers either, which, as I think you can tell by now, is like, I hate that. But yeah, work with an RD and we'll help you feel successful and we'll advocate for you, no matter what's going on in your body and in your life. We'll help you become your happiest and healthiest self. Okay, Q&A, right on time. Whoa.
That was such a good presentation, Rachel. I learned so much. That was
I'm so
really,
happy.
really good. We did get a few questions prior to this. So
Okay.
let's start us off. One of the questions was, what can you do from a nutrition standpoint to offset PCOS symptoms such as facial hair growth?
Okay. Facial hair. It's that hirsutism, right? So going back to one of the slides that we spoke about, it goes back to the insulin because that insulin, that elevated insulin, is going to trigger the ovaries to produce more testosterone. And then the testosterone is going to may manifest physically as that hirsutism, chin hairs, that beard hair where we don't necessarily want it. So we want to manage the insulin resistance to decrease testosterone. And then this is where supplements can really come into play. Ovasitol, I know we really we ran through those supplements, like we zoomed through, but Ovasitol, zinc I didn't include, but I added it to the toolbox. Zinc could be really helpful. Omega-3s can be really helpful. And that NAC and actually spearmint tea can be really, really impactful for that chin hair as well.
Amazing. Did you want to take a peek at some of the questions or?
Sure. Okay, I see. Does going dairy or gluten-free seem to be better for managing acne? Elena, that it's very patient dependent, very patient dependent. It doesn't have to be both. It can be one or the other. I am a believer that you don't necessarily have to have celiac disease in order to avoid gluten. I think you can be gluten sensitive. But what works for me may be different for you, which is also why you do want to work with a dietitian. I've seen some of my patients do really, really well with eliminating gluten from their diet and then reducing dairy. But dairy can also be anti-inflammatory because that high protein dairy has probiotics also. It's a great source of protein, Greek yogurt and cottage cheese. So I've seen it be helpful. I know I'm tangenting, but I like to recommend instead of going like no and eliminating, which may feel super restrictive, especially if you're used to having dairy or gluten all the time. I like to say instead of no, say low. You're low gluten, you're low dairy, right? So instead of maybe Greek yogurt for breakfast, cheese on your sandwich, cheese in your string cheese for snack, cheese in your dinner. We have it once a day. Um, okay. Recommendations for getting enough fiber. Fiber is we zoomed through that too. I could do a whole presentation on fiber. I love fiber. We want to focus on the P, the produce, right? The more vegetables you have, and if you meet that 50% of your plate, the non-starchy veggies, you're going to be getting a lot of fiber. But then 2 tablespoons of chia seeds, flax seeds are really high in fiber. Artichokes, a cup of artichokes, 8 grams of fiber. A cup of raspberries has so much fiber. You could do a chia seed pudding, put raspberries on there, and you're at like 10, 15 grams of fiber a day. The thing you want to remember with fiber, you guys, is that it's if fiber is the door, then water is the key that unlocks the property. So you always want to follow all of that fiber with a lot of water. And if you're struggling to get water in, and if you're my patient here, you'll know this. I always recommend getting a 32 or a 40-ounce water bottle. And then you only have to fill it twice. So you want to remember one by one, done by dinner. So drink one of these 32 ounces by 1 p.m., fill it again, and then be done by dinner. And then with your fiber, that should be enough to kind of combat any sort of uncomfortable feeling that you may experience with increased fiber. Okay, okay, okay. Um, let's see.
Rachel, one of the questions that
Yes.
was asked, I think, would be really helpful. What is the best way to get a diagnosis? Many of the symptoms you listed are for sure happening for me, but I've never been diagnosed.
Okay, so you could, unfortunately, dietitians can't necessarily like properly diagnose. We don't have that, but um we don't have that opportunity yet. Hopefully we can soon. But you should go to your doctor, your endocrinologist, you should, or your OB. But again, if you've had irregular cycles in your lifetime, if you have cystic acne, or if you have some sort of, true hair on. This is not just like the random hair that you see in the rear view, the mirror in your car that everyone I feel like sees. You really are struggling with that hirsutism, probably a PCOS. Um, but I would properly get a diagnosis from an endo or an OB. Okay. Is PCOS genetic? It can be. We're not exactly sure. Again, if this was a male disorder, we would know exactly what the root cause was, but we're not exactly sure. It could absolutely be genetic. Absolutely. Absolutely. What type of magnesium? It depends. There's magnesium glycinate, which is fabulous for just overall relaxation. It's great for muscle aches. It's great for joint pain. It's great for sleep. It's very highly absorbed. Then there's magnesium citrate, which is also really great for sleep, but it's slightly less absorbed, so it has a small effect on your bowels. So if you struggle with regularity, taking citrate could be great. Oxide is another one, another type of magnesium that is the least absorbed, so it's going to have a significant effect on your bowels. So if you don't struggle with constipation, I would highly recommend steering away from magnesium oxide. But again, talk to your RD or your MD to determine which type of magnesium is right for you.
Rachel, I think we're actually out of time.
Oh my God. This was so much fun. This was so fun. I'm so happy we did this.
Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll send the recording and the copies of the slides, and hope to see everybody in our next webinar. Thank you guys.
Bye.